Another team that kind of stood out to me, and they stood out to me throughout the entirety of everything we're talking about, but they really stood out on a per drive basis, was the Denver Broncos, who obviously coming into I think I started the Denver Broncos team preview by saying they couldn't pass, they couldn't run, they couldn't pass block, and they couldn't avoid turnovers and sacks. But other than that, they did fine. That is essentially the story of the Broncos season last year. And when you look at not only this, but we're looking at when we start talking about expected touchdowns here in a bit, we start talking about red zone success, both getting to it and scoring. All of their numbers were so low. And you've already
Oh yeah.
brought up the regression, arguments for just blanket. I'm going to look at this team that finished 31st in the league in scoring rate per drive, and I'm going to assume there's going to be some regression because that's what generally happens for these teams. Even without that just blanket, you know, blind team look at this team, then you go, oh yeah, they also have Sean Payton. Oh yeah, once Nathaniel Hackett was gone, we saw Russell Wilson play a little bit better down the stretch. And there are so many markers for this team doing well. And I don't think ADP really reflects that. It especially doesn't reflect that for Russ. It kind of does for Jerry Jeudy a little bit. Even though
Yeah,
I
he's the
kind of
only
think
one.
Courtland Sutton's probably is who he is, like, is it worth taking a bet on him? I'm
But
a
that's
big
fine where
time
he's at
into
now. He's corrected.
exactly, exactly. And I'm big time into Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, he has so much more upside than the people going in front of him in drafts. And the downside is there. The downside's there for every running back drafted after like 12. And so I think that, that whole team, especially looking at these numbers and looking at the series, that team sticks out as somebody as a team that if it doesn't hit, it's fine. None of them cost very much except for Jeudy. But if it does hit, then you're looking at, a really good stack that could differentiate you and put you in good spots, especially in best ball tournaments.
The Broncos, they were just in every single one of these write-ups, man. Just what a
It's
just
rough.
complete factory of sadness the offense was. I mean, they were 31st in scoring rate per drive, 30th in touchdown rate per drive. They punted on 49.7% of drives that didn't end in kneel downs. That was the highest rate since the 2018 Josh Rosen led Arizona Cardinals. That's how bad they were. With like a guy that they traded like a farm for, right? Like with Russell Wilson. No team reached the red zone at a lower rate per drive last season than the Broncos. It was the lowest rate again since the 2018 Josh Rosen led Cardinals. So it's like the company that they were keeping. The Broncos are really interesting to me in the context of this conversation that we've had the last 2 weeks because of the Russell Wilson factor, right? You add a guy like Sean Payton. Now, is Sean Payton going to be the coach that finally gets through to Russell Wilson and gets him to adapt
That's
to
the
the
question.
modern
Yep.
NFL? Right? Like, because Russell Wilson, we've talked about the let him cook narrative for so many years. And no matter whether it's Daryl Bevel, Brian Schottenheimer, Shane Waldron, Nathaniel Hackett, like every Russell Wilson offense ends up falling into looking like the Russell Wilson offense because of his play style. And the way teams are playing defense in the NFL, it's way more set up for like the Sean Payton offense to have success than the Russell Wilson offense. So is he going to be able to adapt and stop being like that big game hunter? Russ wants to throw the ball down the field, outside the numbers. He wants to extend plays and make big plays. And the NFL is not really built around that right now in the current defensive meta. So does Russ acquiesce some of his game this year? Do we finally see that change? Because I mean, we can easily throw Nathaniel Hackett under the bus, but like a lot of that stuff from last year was still Russell Wilson, just being Russell Wilson against defenses that are structurally more better designed to stop that style of football.
Yeah, and I make a lot of fun of Courtland Sutton and his relative inefficiency he's had in the league. And it wasn't just last year. So this is not to absolve him of any of that. But I do remember last year Russ just throwing prayer balls up the sideline at him. And I don't really know what he's supposed to do with those. And to your point, that was one of my main concerns. Are we going to see Jerry Jeudy get peppered with targets in the shorter areas and across the middle of the field from Russ when I don't know if that's exactly what he's interested in doing? Is Sean Payton the coach to come in? Was last year so bad for Russ that he thinks, okay, this is something that needs to change? I'm not sure. I'm not going
Mhm.
to make any
We don't
judgments
have
on
those
Russell Wilson's
answers.
personality.
I hope we get fewer
Exactly.
Subway commercials. I know that.
Yeah, I wonder if he still has a bunch in the bank like that weird Baker Mayfield year whenever he wasn't starting anymore, but he was still on. he was still on every commercial
The
break. I wonder if we're
Progressive
gonna get a
commercials,
lot of
yeah.
Russ. Yeah, I wonder if we're gonna get a lot of Russ commercials. And we're back, and the Broncos have scored 0 points in 3 quarters. Russ, how do you feel about Subway? Like, I wonder if we're gonna
Those
get
dangerous Subway commercials, those were, whew. I don't know how those got greenlit, man.
it was yeah, it was not ideal.